Hello there, Frantz Kantor here, cartoonist, illustrator, caricaturist, teacher, etc., etc., etc. Today we've got a really special face. I love this guy. This is a thumbnail sketch I did of him, and I just drew up from the thumbnail sketch all of the energy in this. It's kind of a beautiful shape. It's like another lamb chop. Like that. Isn't that beautiful? That's fantastic. And then you've got the schnoz, which comes down beautifully overlapping those lines. So you've got a lovely sense of depth and shape. He's got eyes that look, I don't know what they're called, like lazy eyes perhaps, or wall-eyed or something. And he's got a very iconic expression. You can almost say you've got him there. This is, of course, this fellow, this young man here, who died at a very young age, comparatively. He was a very heavy smoker, and I don't think he had a good handle on healthy eating either. So very, smokers, a lot of people that are in the arts that smoke, they're very intense people, and he was like a master of timing and comedy. So this is Marty Feldman, and of course we'll talk about his work. He's in some great classics, and I love his routines and his energy, and we're going to try and capture some of that in his face. So from the thumbnail, I've transported tried to get a lot of that energy. I've lost a little bit. Try to get a lot of that energy into the bigger drawing, and I think this might be a bit better. Yeah, that might be better. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Let's get ready to rumble. So as usual, with these pencils, the Prismacolors, they're very soft. They tend to break a lot, so you go through quite a lot of these. I need these for the highlights, get a good handle on the highlights. I'm using a bit of a harder, more robust pencil than the Prismacolor. For the black lines, I'm using a polychromo. And of course for the sketching, which I started out using, it's almost a violin bow grip on the pencil to get a very loose, wider line, right? Just to create a starting shape, which I can very easily distort. So as you have it here, this is the impression. Looking at the face, you get an impression. This is the impression I got, right? So it's a symbol making process of your brain. This is what you're using. This is what you're actually doing. And as well as that, there are a lot of things going on in your head, right? We've just removed Yorick from his little stage. Ooh, headache. So you are referring to the skull underneath, which obviously shows up in the forehead, the cranium area, the jaw area, the jawbone. Would be prominent areas where you would see evidence of the skull. Not so much around the eyes, because these have a lot of muscles around here, and indeed that muscles sort of pull in the areas of the nose, which create another complex form of expressions. This is the diving board for the nose. You could see with the photograph of the reference we've got of Marty, that diving board. Ooh, he came out quite a long way. That's a high dive. And this is his signature look. All he had to do, really, because of this I don't know whether you call it an affliction. It's just a trait he had with these eyes. All he had to do was stand there and have a confused expression on his face, and people would just burst into laughter. It was just really, really powerful. So he was more of a physical comedian than anything else. We'll talk about his work in a little bit. So try to think of faces, the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to this, actually. So the opportunity of using a pencil to sculpt forms, right? Whenever you get a chance to do that, it's very rewarding. You should try to play with shapes as much as you can. Let's try to make a schnoz out of there. So, why has he got a... So, it's just a way of almost like what you're doing with putty, with Play-Doh or something. You create these shapes. Infinite variety, okay? Infinite variety of distortions and changing the reference point. So it still looks like a head, but you're stretching the argument, you're stretching the proportions, changing the proportions on the fly. So does that mean you're intentionally losing proportions? So it may very well do that. So there's a razor's edge sort of situation where you may lose the likeness, but try to keep an open mind and enjoy the process. Sometimes it's good to get lost. I think that may even be another Bob Ross saying. Sometimes it's good to get lost. What am I looking for? Looking for some glasses so I can zero in on his beautiful countenance. So I'm starting in this area, the T-zone, which is the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Now, the relationships between these, right? You have to keep your eye on all of these things at once in order to create and keep a sense of a likeness, of a resemblance. The resemblance is not necessarily based on proportions. It could be you because you're distorting the proportions. It is based on detail, right? So, that's where you need to define your exaggeration by placing emphasis on a lot of those little details. Could be micro expressions and things, and this is something that will occur to you in the drawing itself. The similar with lighting, similar with references to anatomy, thinking about anatomy. This occurs to you as an organic process in drawing. It's not a shopping list. The other thing worth noting is, of course, we've got a light source which is coming in on the left-hand side, which means that the shadows are going to be created on the right-hand side, the lower right-hand side of this, if we want to draw dimensionally as a three-dimensional construct, which is the whole purpose of these three pencils. This method comes to us from ancient times of cave dwelling ancestors. They used white pigments and clays and black charcoal, etc., through the lens of people like Da Vinci, and of course into the neoclassicists and into today. The neoclassicists were around at the time of Napoleon. Okay, all right. So let's continue on. We're referencing the T-zone, of course, the mask area. So we need to think about all of these lines. Zip back and forth with your eyes. Don't make assumptions. What's that? Is there a Three Stooges skit on assumptions? You might make an ass of you and me? No. When you assume. Where is that from, the Three Stooges? I'm sure it's from somewhere like that. So, okay, I'm talking about the process. We're going to talk a little bit about some of my favorite Marty Feldman moments. There was a film that my mother took me to as a sort of a babysitting thing while she did shopping at Fleming's in Rose Bay. She took me to the Rose Bay Winter Garden with my sister, and we kind of bemused to see this film which had nudity in it, and we were just little kids. But my mother didn't know that. She just dropped us off there thinking, they'll be all right. And the film I'm referring to has two titles. It's got two songs it was a 1960s film, I think, or 1970 film. Was it 70? I think probably 71. And the film was had two titles. One of the titles was Think Dirty, which I think is the title for it in America and Europe. And in England and Australia, it was called Every Home Should Have One, which is the titular song at the beginning of the credits. And it was really, I absolutely enjoyed it because, mind you, at the same time, I watched things like The Party with Peter Sellers in the same venue. I don't know whether it was sort of an English comedy. Maybe it was an English comedy festival that my mother dropped me off to. I don't know, but I absolutely adored it. I don't know what my sister thought of it. Maybe she just, was a bit bemused by it, but I absolutely adored it. This man was incredible. He was just incredible. He just, everybody in the film was there to prop up his shtick, his, comedy. So the storyline is this, and this is very important while I'm talking to you about the storyline of Every Home Should Have One, because it actually, when you're a kid, you're very impressionable, right? One of the things that impresses you is careers. And for some reason, I was entranced by the notion of working for a great metropolitan newspaper. I guess who else worked for a great metropolitan newspaper? Superman, that's right. Also, Spider-Man, Daily Bugle, right? Peter Parker worked for the Daily Bugle. So when I was working at the newspapers, that's all I could think of. I'm in the footsteps of greatness, Superman and Spider-Man. There you go. That's my only reason for doing it. I had no other reason. I really, honestly did not read newspapers, except maybe to have a go at the spot the ball on the back page. I really did not look at newspapers that much, except for the Sunday comics. Then I would, I'd be all over Prince Valiant, of course, and some of the other comics, even the Phantom a little bit, So I found that very that was very interesting, and for a similar reason, I became interested in advertising, in the shtick of advertising, the language, the what do you call it, the narrative, the communication. So advertising is a form of communication, right? It's a very specific. It's product based or service based, but it tells a story. It's very, very story oriented. And they come up with things like campaigns and stuff like that, and really all they are stories. That's all they are. There are no gimmicks involved in this. They're just telling stories, and we respond to the stories by handing over money. That's it. It's a very simple form of transaction. They tell stories, we pay their money, and we buy the happy ending. We buy the product from reading or listening or watching the stories that they create. Anyway, getting back to Marty, the film Every Home Should Have One. Marty plays an advertising art director. Who else is an advertising art director in a TV show or something that I could watch and marvel at? Darren Stevens. So the husband of Samantha Stevens, the witch in Bewitched, was an art director, and he would have these flip charts with ideas and drawings and things, And I loved that stuff. Absolutely. I ate it up. I loved that stuff. Because, to be able to communicate the start of an ad campaign or a commercial, especially an animated commercial or something, it's like the genesis of Snap, Crackle and Pop. So whatever genius came up with Snap, Crackle and Pop to sell cereal, you know, it was incredible. It was incredible and so powerful. You would not buy cereal without cartoons. It's inconceivable. There is no way you would buy cereal without cartoons. And really, you know, Kellogg's used to spoil kids a lot. I know they made money on it, and let's not be too cynical, but they made money on the transaction, obviously. They wouldn't do it if there's no profit. But really, you know, breakfast was full of joy, especially Saturday morning cartoons, you know, having your favorite cereal, you know, probably Cocoa Pops with Coco the monkey, or it's Fruit Loops with Sam Toucan, or, you know, Tony the Tiger, Sugar Frosties. I made cornflakes edible. So I loved that stuff. I just loved it. The communication, the possibilities of it, the ideas, the creativity, the imagination, all of this, and it had realistic purposes in the end. You know, it could exist as a animated cartoon, or you know, hit the shelves in the supermarket. You know, and this is that was a wonderful thing. And we kind of take it for granted now in this world of PC, a PC world, you know, where everything is sanitized and double, triple checked and things. And, you know, but I had such a beautiful childhood growing up with all of this fantastic material. And, you know, Saturday morning cartoons were oh man, they were so important to me. You know, it was my time. It was it was the crucible of my ideas. You're sitting there, lying on the floor in the lounge room, right? You're up early. You got your comic book out, American comic. You turn to the page with, you know, all of these promises of what you should get. Even in Australia, for Saturday morning cartoons, you should get the Herculoids and things because it's advertised there. And you keep your fingers crossed that Herculoids have come on, and lo and behold, Herculoids came up, you know, or Johnny Quest or something. And, you know, and it was just the biggest thing for me. It literally fulfilled me for the whole of the Saturday, the whole of the weekend. All I was thinking about were the comics, the cartoons, and a lot of the animated cartoons. I really loved them. You know, when advertising uses cartoons, they're using something that is like a sledgehammer. It's incredibly powerful. Oh my God. And, you know, advertisers forget that it's actually really powerful it's a really powerful language, a visual language that works incredibly powerfully for adults. So it's not like a kid's zone thing, even though kids, they think that kids dominate the use of cartoons. And really, I suppose that can be true, but the language, the visual language of cartoons is universal. So really, really, you know, a wonderful, rich childhood of advertising and cartoons and comics. Loved it. We never got the Kool-Aid cartoons or the other brands. Oh, we had Wheaties and things like that. You know, they had a cartoon character. But most of the stuff that we saw were cereal-based, chocolates or cereal-based candy. We never had like Frankenberry and Count Chocula and all this stuff, and Quisp that they had in America. Of course, that there was a much bigger market, And when they had their cartoon mascots, of course, that were we were very jealous when we saw the adverts for Quisp and Frankenberry, Count Chocula, in the comics that we got, the American comics, Marvel comics, etc., and DC comics. You feel really cheated that you didn't get this. Why can't we get this? You have to have stinky old cornflakes. So, the film was about an art director who used sex to sell porridge, right? That was the premise of the film. That's why it's called Think Dirty, because he had to go home and think dirty, right? And his wife was trying to get on the good side of the local bishop and, I think it's Society for Keep England Clean society. And they were petitioning a local MP. So it was that sort of, that was the contrast, right? He had to think dirty and his wife was trying to do the opposite. Anyway, why am I mentioning this is because they created like an animated commercial for this porridge using the story of Goldilocks and sex to sell the concept. And I just thought it was a very it wasn't it was just a comedy premise. It's not real. No, it doesn't. The world is not as transparent as that. We're not all as simple as that we are in comedies. So, very interesting fellow, this guy. He, of course, was Igor in Young Frankenstein, which is a Mel Brooks film. And he had his own TV show as well, the Marty Feldman Hour, or the Marty Feldman Half Hour. I can't remember which one that was, but and they were just a series of sketches. That's it. They were just funny situations, and he had all of the energy of the Goons and Monty Python, but he was like one person. And I think to have that sort of ability to, create comedy and create this sort of incredibly energetic form of comedy, and most of it very physical comedy too. So a lot of actions, and it's got some these mutton chops are incredibly iconic to him as well. So, yeah, I really enjoyed his energy and obviously his expression. In Young Frankenstein, he plays the hunchback, and Mel Brooks plays the doctor, Dr. Frankenstein. He calls himself, no, it's pronounced Frankenstein. So he's trying to distance himself from his ancestor, his grandfather who created the original monster. So it was a homage to Frankenstein, to the Universal films. I mean, when you look at it, it's freaky how close the sets were and the lighting, and you know, the tonal work of the photographer, of the camera work, everything in there. It's freaky how close it was to, you know, a 1930s style. And so Igor was the hunchback, and he had some great lines in the film. And even if you were to if you haven't got access to the film, you haven't got the DVD or something, you can always jump onto YouTube and have a look at the bloopers. They themselves are amazing. So let's try to get a bit of character. I'm not using reference for these sleeves. I just want to try to get some movement, a little bit of movement in the cloth itself. This is a lot of fun. This is an easy job for me. Not an easy job in terms of capturing the likeness, but just an easy job as a pleasure. It's a pleasure to work on his face, you know. That's kind of working all right, I think. What's that? So let's hit it with some black pencil, and we'll make a decision about what to do with the hair in a second, because you know, there's a lot of hair here, and I don't want to keep going over the hair with a black pencil. We'll just work on building up contrast. I think that's what we'll do. So firstly, you've got very, very powerful eyes. So we need to capture that drama in there. Let's try to hit it with, let's get some of that, get some of that, get some of that. What's that? No, that's not what we want. I'll try and use this when in doubt. Use the Staedtler permanent marker. So I'm trying to just establish a hierarchy of dark to light, light to dark, and to create a sense of drama, which kind of makes it look very crisp. And it's three-dimensional. Obviously, it'll look three-dimensional because of the tonal work. But I just want it to have a bit of sharp elements drawn in. So let's try to build that up a little bit. We're going to help. The pencil, the black pencil will help, obviously. I just thought it might be fun to see how much detail I can get in there with a pen. Okay, let's try now with a pencil. It should be okay. So the idea of all of this stuff is not to think of outlining things. There's obviously a line between the iris and the white of the eye, and the white of the eye isn't white either. So you notice we're going to try to make this grey background paper actually work for us tonally. It will look like we've got a handle on a 50% tone, right? So let's try to establish some. We've got a paint pen here, a white paint pen, which is quite opaque, and we're going to try to get some sharp reflections which will help give that feeling of crispness. Quite a few reflections, actually. What else can we do? It's quite a lot of. That's good. Just here and there. We're going to hit it with a white pencil, obviously, but I just want to try to get a little bit of help with the white pen. See what we can establish a nice set of dramatic lines, dramatic highlights. Now, of course, I've wrapped the eyes around, exaggerated the distension of the eyes. So I've wrapped them around the face more, just for fun, because I can, just for fun. I thought it'd be an interesting thing. It's absolutely beautiful eyes, very, very expressive. A delight to draw. They really are. Let's try to get a shine now. I'm going to try. This is a brush version of the Posca marker, the opaque marker. So I just want to help get a little bit of a harder edge, sharper edge on the rim light or the side light on the other side of the shadow. Seems like it might work. That. Okay. Nice and slow. I don't want to rush this part. Because this, when we're talking about the T-zone, right, the mask area of the face, it's very crucial that you keep referencing the photograph or the image you're working from. And think about it, even if you're not working from a photograph. Think about what these highlights are, right? And how relevant they are, how smooth, how broad, what sort of light is it as an edge light of some kind? How does that refer to the rest of the forms? How does it work, So there's a lot of little things you have to think about when you're drawing. And because it's a story you're telling with a pencil, right, with these materials. So you have to think about what's the story, what's the plot, what's the main character, what's the, how do these elements, these lines you're putting in, how do they refer to each other in terms of their importance in the overall structure of the face of the drawing that you're doing? How important are they? I'm happy with that already. That's good. I think we're doing some nice shaping here. Let's get in with the black a little bit more. Now remember that a lot of this paint's still wet, so it seems to be all right. This sort of light hair is difficult to progress with because you're going to get a different effect of pencil work. So what I like to do, I think, is just to think about or look at where it is absolutely darkest and just refer to that in the pencil. Don't overdo it. Don't colour it in any further, because the brown pencil is actually doing quite a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the form, creating a three-dimensional drawing. So it doesn't need a lot of help, See how the black pencil can go over a lot of the brown pencil, and it gives it a warmer look against the grey paper. Because if the black pencil was just on the grey, it wouldn't be any warmth to it at all. Okay, so don't outline anything. Think about it before you start outlining forms and shapes and things and saying, well, this is the eyelid. Don't draw eyes like this, with outlines. They don't have outlines. Well, they do if you're doing, a simple inking process or something. But really, we're drawing something that has form. So the eyes have a light and dark aspects to them that are more important, more relevant than the shape of the eye. So, for example, I'm only putting black over the top of the eye, where the lashes are, because they're building up a lot of the shade, a lot of they're the darkest elements. And everything else I have to be careful with how much black I can use. Right? So I have to judge the light and the darkness of the forms that I'm trying to explain, trying to capture. So there's some beautiful shapes here that I've exaggerated, which I'll play up even further, I hope, if we've got time, with the black pen, brush pen, and that will give us a little bit of exaggerate the contours of this beautiful face. And it is beautiful. It is very. You know what? It's so expressive. Really, he's so expressive. It really is a joy to draw this. I can't tell you how much fun I'm having with this. It's a lot of fun. Even this annoying little hairs that I've got to draw over here. So, yeah, you just, work within the shapes, follow them around, and look at the light and the dark of the drawing, of the reference material, and make value judgments as to how dark to respond with the line of the pencil. Okay, so let's go for it, shall we? Let's try to draw the lip line of the mouth. That's it. That'll do. It's got a beautiful velvety iris here, which we're going to try to get with a little bit of help from the white pencil in a few minutes. So, never take anything for granted, never guess, unless you really want to, but the direction of eyebrow hairs, for example, is something it has a general direction, but of course everybody has a different shape, and so it's best to not to presume too much. Don't be presumptuous. Kind of nice, I like this. Alright, so I do want to colour in this area. It's supposed to be quite light in tone, so we'll just help out a little bit here and there. So Young Frankenstein I was so shocked. You know, I actually saw Young Frankenstein before I saw Frankenstein or any of the Universal movies other than the Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. Of course, I saw that as a kid many, many times and still love it. Again, another homage to an incredible genre. For some reason, they haven't been able to capture the visual narrative since the 1930s, early 40s. So, I mean, they've tried so many times. How many, the Mummy. Actually, I quite like the Vosloo Mummy. I quite enjoyed that. I thought it was pretty close to reinventing the wheel for Universal. I actually didn't mind the Tom Cruise Mummy, but I think they overdid the story, with Russell Crowe as the werewolf. I wonder where they were going to go with that. They're in a difficult position, really. They've got like this great material that they haven't been able to get it anywhere near as close to besting. And it's from so long ago. Maybe they should take a leaf out of the book of DC, because DC made terrible films, but fantastic animated films. So maybe Universal should do a different medium. What that medium is, I don't know. Is it TV? Is it games? We don't know. But, it doesn't look like the films are the same quality as the 1930s and 40s. And it's not me saying that, it's everyone saying that. And they said they can't not have that as their main thing in their meetings. It's obvious. I mean, how cool is Lon Chaney Jr.? Come on, really. No, I'm not casting dispersions on their newer versions of the franchise. It's fine, but it's not the same. It's not the same thing. It's not as much fun. Not as interesting, But they can't do that same thing again, because even if they could, if they were to be a homage like Young Frankenstein, would it work? I don't know. Would it work? I don't know. Because the world's moved so far in the 70 years. We've come so far that a lot of the visual language of films, that the visual language that they used in Universal horror films then has a time lock. It's like we're enjoying it, but it's time relevant. It's from back then. It's like looking at the acting in a silent film, right, in Metropolis or something. It's cool. It's very cool to look at it, but you cannot possibly think that would make a film today. It would look... Actually, I'm just thinking about the film Silent Movie that he made with Mel Gibson, where he actually tried to do that very thing. Very, very funny scenes. Subtitles, obviously. There's no speaking in it that I remember. Look, he's such a brilliant comedian, and very sad that he didn't live to be like an old centenarian or something, because he was like, you can imagine him with his smoking jacket and his side levers, probably, these big Edwardian side levers in an old person's home, 100-year-old dirty old man. It'd be wonderful. His characters that he created were really beautiful. Well, so well created, so well thought out. So the film Every Home Should Have One was sort of like his TV show. You had these, it was like a bunch of sketches looking for a plot. And that's fine. That was absolutely fine. Whatever the reason, the sketches were funny. They were really funny. If you get a chance, I don't know if it's on YouTube. I don't know where it would be. You may have to sort of buy it on eBay as a DVD or something. Something you wouldn't be getting a VHS, for God's sake. Or it's gone the way of the beta. Gosh, them were the days, eh? Mr. What was it called? Video Easy, Blockbuster. I lived in those shops. I did video covers, and every night I would be out after dinner with my 3 daughters in tow. We would go and we'd buy films we'd rent films that each of us wanted to see something, horror film or sci-fi film or whatever, or cartoons. And I loved it. It was, it just, and even they wouldn't, because it was like 7 o'clock or something, so it was an hour before they had to go to bed. So they would never see the whole film. It was great. I thought it was great. The ability to watch film. It's like in many ways we're much luckier today because a lot of this stuff, bloopers especially, are on YouTube that we can enjoy and see. What everybody was talking about. Like The Shining. I've never seen The Shining, but I know The Shining trope. I know it, right? I know The Shining trope because of all of the references in other films and pop culture and things like that. So, in many ways, I don't need to see The Shining. A couple of reasons why I haven't seen it. One is some Kubrick films I don't immediately warm to, and that unfortunately is one of them. Another reason is because it deals with a form of horror that's to do with ghosts, but a psychological form of ghosts. There's a ghost story of, it could be, is it madness or is it really ghosts? We don't know. So that sort of thing is not, so much to do with fantasy, with the classic stuff with the monster makeup and all that sort of thing, which I really enjoyed. I just think there's a reason for those films being so popular because they're so inventive and creative, and I love them so much, And when you see somebody using that genre and excelling in it, like Guillermo del Toro, for example. His films just sing with creativity and imagination. They're just so exciting. That's the beauty of the even the old what do you call it, the latex masks and prosthetics and all of that sort of stuff. The in-camera effects rather than digital effects. There's just something about it, that just rings truer for some reason. Don't get me wrong, I love modern films. I love I'm not against modern techniques, film techniques. I love them too, but occasionally when you see a suit, it's like, how cool were the Ninja Turtles costumes? They were brilliant. Something that the CGI versions of the Ninja Turtles, they cannot capture that feeling. And, for all the beautiful CGI work in Godzilla, in the Godzilla films, the new films, brilliant stuff. But when you see Godzilla, walking around in a suit, and it's a suit, but it just feels right. It just feels right. I don't know. There's something about it. It's really hypnotic. It brings back memories of the kid, the kid in you watching those films for the first time. It's embedded in your childhood, in your the things that make you you. It's the things that make you you. It's a special effect, It's the effect of the special effect is the effect that it has on kids, on your imagination. That's the effect. That's the special effect. If you want to talk about a special effect, it's no SFX, special effects. No, it's the effect that this monster design has on kids. Case in point, what about the creature from the Black Lagoon? I've never been able to do the creature from the Black Lagoon, anything like it. And that's a guy in a suit. It was brilliant. So when Marty was in Young Frankenstein, you like that segue? So when Marty was in Young Frankenstein, he played Igor or Igor. So he was doing his spin on the Igor trope. The Igor trope. People that like Bela Lugosi played Igor. So he was sort of channeling, those people, but doing his own shtick, his own impression. It was like a caricature of a trope, a caricature of a shared memory rather than a specific character. So he wasn't doing a caricature of Bela Lugosi. He wasn't doing a caricature of, the original Franz, I think his name was, in the original 1933 Frankenstein. He wasn't doing the Hunchback from those films. He was doing a trope, which is like a shared... It could be a wrong impression, but it's a shared memory of something in popular culture. And it doesn't have to be correct. It's like, in many cases it's more important that the trope itself reflects something of the nature of the person, the thing, story, whatever, the film. It's like, the words "played against Sam," which is attributed to Humphrey Bogart, were never actually in the film. They're not written that way. Also, things like, we use the term Frankenstein. Oh, you look like a Frankenstein. Of course, the Frankenstein is the name of the doctor. The creature doesn't actually have a name. He's not Frankenstein Jr. He doesn't actually have a name. But we've sort of, the trope has sort of grown past the truth or the accuracy of what it's portraying. That's a very important thing because, when you refer to tropes, when you refer to popular culture, you've got to keep it relevant to the people that you're talking to. And if that means that that you have got to play it again, Tham, then that's what it means. Right or wrong, that's how it is. The trope has taken over the accuracy of its origin. The accuracy of its origin. How's that? So the trope has exceeded the accuracy of its origin. And that's a very important factor with these things. So when Mel Brooks did Young Frankenstein, of course, it was full of tropes, and some of those tropes were erroneous. They were wrong, but too late. It's already part of popular culture. So it's very important to refer to the source, but refer to the source in context with our knowledge of how the source is perceived today. Love these eyes. They're great. So there's a reflection, there's like a jewel quality to the eyes, which I'm trying to capture. This sort of translucent velvety, translucent skin. There's a whole lot of little things. I wouldn't mind. I could spend another 10 hours on this. I wouldn't do it over this because there's only so much There's only so much. Hang on. Sorry. It's a little bit. The brush hairs congeal a little bit because it's a brush pen. Okay, we might leave that. I think we'll leave that. Let's try, just for the fun of it, we'll try some white, and we'll just make this a different effect. So what I like to do with the white is to outline a little bit of the space, the negative space, that I am drawing around the face, around the head. Why is it important? Because negative space is one of the compositional tools that people use to establish balance and a control of the gaze. The eyes are very relevant in the process. So how you control with the use of negative space, how you control how the eye views the work. So you're creating a sense of balance and locking the figure like a logo element, perhaps. I think I might just go back into it with a black line in a sec. show you what the difference is. You will see the lines punch. They'll punch out stronger. Beautiful face. Really, it's a pleasure, a real pleasure to draw this. Can't tell you how much fun I'm having. Which, guess what? That's the whole reason for the drawing, is to have fun. And no other reason. I have other things to do. I'm sure you do too. But I am really enjoying this. So let's here we go. Yeah, so that kind of punches the head out a little bit, making a distinction between the background and the foreground. So in drawing, this is sort of like an overstatement. Yes, you create form and you also create a sense of drama. And sometimes the drama doesn't have form, like the background here doesn't have form. But it's kind of interesting to put that in the dialogue of the drawing, because that way your eyes go towards a form. It makes the form more readable. Before we do anything else, let's get a brush pen. This is a Zig brush. It's a flexible, holds a lot of the ink is in the handle, and you squeeze it and it comes out. And it's got a long brush, so it can go very broad and very fine at the same time. It's handy being able to put my hand on the wet paint. Hope it's not going to smudge. So the idea is, constantly reworking the dialogue of the drawing, creating a contrast, so making things bolder, louder, perhaps. Is the reason why we're doing this now. And we're not doing it all over, we're just doing it where it's needed, where we feel it's needed. Okay, so it's all a matter of choices that we make with drawings. Sometimes we make the wrong ones, but that's cool. There's no shame in stuffing up. Let's colour this in while we're here. There's a little bit of difference between that and the suit. It's nice. Fix up the ears. That should be enough, I think. That looks like it will work. Let's finish him off. I'm so happy I get a chance to do Marty. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. This is Marty Feldman, great talent and great inspiration to me personally. This is him before, this is the after, this is my caricature. This is Frantz Kantor. And I will catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.